The gymnasium was large and beautifully decorated. Upon its walls were paintings which were bright and detailed. They depicted the various exercises that would be performed by the very wealthy Athenians that attended this place every day. Some showed the use of weights, which were swung in a way to aid the athlete to jump great heights or distances. Sometimes the same weights were used in a swinging motion to build muscles. There were also depictions of Spartan calisthenic exercises where you would learn to pull your whole body up with one arm or press it from the ground in the same manner. We saw stone blocks with special handles fitted on them that could be lifted overhead or placed on higher surfaces, and logs fitted in a similar manner, which were of great weight and length. Amongst these pictures were statues as well, statues that showed the beauty and symmetry of the male physique in its idealized form. Using heroic poses, these statues were there to inspire those who visited. And heroes they were, being the likeness of Theseus or Heracles or Bellerophon. But today, there was an extra in their number. Someone standing just as still as them, but with rather a different appearance. Socrates was well known for moments where his contemplations would take him into such a deep state of focus that he would be as still as a man can be for a considerable amount of time. Today, he had been in the gymnasium so long in this state that he had become invisible to those who were attending and exercising. All around, there are men of great muscular appearance. They performed their exercises, but they also oiled their bodies and posed for each other. They compared themselves to those statues, and some even brought mirrors to hold so that they could see the countenance of themselves and the appearance of their bodies. There was much talk of different exercises and the way that these would affect the body and bring around the physiques that they sought after. Little did any of them know that as Socrates stood there today, his subject of contemplation was them. When he finally spoke, it reminded everyone of his presence. They had forgotten him so completely that it was as if he'd burst into the room. Great men of Athens, I am but an old man. May I ask you a question about what you are undertaking here in this location? An immediate silence came across the room. The older members of the gymnasium knew Socrates, and they were well aware of the kind of thing that was about to follow. They knew that it would be prudent to remain quiet, and indeed some of them started to make their way from the room so that they wouldn't be the subject of his questioning. But the younger athletes were largely unaware of who this was, and two of them, which were quite close to him, decided to respond. Both of them were beautiful in appearance and wore the most lavish of clothes. In the hand of the first was a small mirror, while the other stood leant up against one of the statues. The first youth spoke. "Aged philosopher, please ask your questions. As we can see from your physique and by your nature, you certainly don't know anything of the gymnasium." The youths laughed, but the older, more knowledgeable attendees only took a sharp intake of breath. It appeared that they were unaware that Socrates was a decorated soldier and athlete who competed very successfully in various sports, including wrestling, and fought with distinction at some very bloody wars. Socrates himself didn't show any sign of response, but rather shuffled himself slightly to the side so he could see the two youths he was talking to. He paused for a few moments as if contemplating them, the mirror, the statue and the equipment around them. He then gazed around the room, catching the eye of each person there, as if to make sure they were silent and paying attention. "May I ask what a great undertaking you are preparing for in such dedicated training? Perhaps you are like Milo of Cronton, preparing for a military career." The youths seemed taken aback. "We are not military men, but rather men of distinguished tastes and of great position within society, Sage. And we attend the gymnasium in imitation of the heroes you see in the statues around you." The youth gestured to the one next to him. "This, I'm sure, is something that you would approve of, and indeed I don't believe anyone could see as anything but a virtuous undertaking." He seemed very pleased with himself and looked at his friend as if to say, "I think I've bested our guest." Socrates leant back slightly and looked at the ceiling. His response was most certainly to the youths, but it had the feel of a man reciting a poem or performing a speech that they'd gone over again and again. "I congratulate you on the honourable sentiments by which you are actuated. The path of the hero is one that we should all aspire to walk. But as the statue which you stand near to is most certainly that of Heracles, and nowhere within this building do I see one of Narcissus, I must conclude that your goal is really to cultivate the genuine virtues of a hero within yourself. Is this correct? He turned to gaze at the youth, who, while nodding, repositioned the mirror slightly behind him so it was not so easy to see. Socrates looked around the room, and can we all conclude that it is the heroic actions of someone that define them as a hero, not their appearance, their reputation, or their status? We can. An older member of the attendees expressed in words what everyone else was expressing by their nodding heads. This morning, as I wandered along the outskirts of Athens, as it is wont for me to do, I observed many things. The large stones that our ancestors placed here as the landmarks of the borders of our great city, they have fallen over in many places, or been buried, or completely obscured by nature. Someone could restore these, lifting the stones as you lift the stones in this room. I also saw a lame man. He was struggling to carry water buckets that he had weighted on his shoulders in a similar way that you weight your shoulders here and walk up and down. In my memory, as clear as this moment, I can also see something else. I observed an elderly lady. She was attempting to cut through wood by chopping it with an axe. This widow has no one to aid her. If only someone was to chop the wood in the manner in which you swing these weights. There was silence, and Socrates paused for a moment. Great men of Athens, why do you lift these objects up and down in this room, when outside its walls there are opportunities for heroic endeavour which will do as much for your soul as they do for your body?